I'm starting to quilt Jack Star in the middle of the quilt. If I were working on a long arm machine, I would start at the top of the quilt and work my way down. I'm using a 50 weight cotton thread from WonderFil. The brand is Cutie from WonderFil, and the color is lamb. And I'm using a DecoBob 80 weight polyester in the bobbin. They're not a perfect match, but they're a really close match. I use a thinner thread in the bobbin than in the needle so that I get more yardage. I've situated my quilt skinny ways in my machine so that when I'm in the middle, half of the quilt is inside my sewing machine, and I want it to be the skinny half instead of the wide half. You can choose to make feathers with or without the spine. I like to have the spine, so I'm going to start out by stitching that. And I'm going to just needle down, needle up, bring up my bobbin thread, make a tiny little tack stitch, grab my Batt Scooters to push my fabric, and I'm going to stitch around that circle. Now I'm not going to cut my thread. I am going to make traditional feathers, which means I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to go up around the curve and back to the line. And they're all going to be approximately the same height. If you have trouble keeping all of your feathers the same height, you can go in with a ruler and give yourself a guideline on the outside. So say, oh, I want all my feathers to be 1.5 inches tall, make an 1.5 inch line and make it all the way around. I'm just going to wing mine. I do focus more, though, about the height of the feathers than the width of the feathers. The width of the feathers, these are free motion. They're all going to be different. But if the height is the same, they look more consistent. I'm using wool batting and a thread that matches fairly well, so the loft of the wool will hopefully give a little shadow to help you see where the feathers are. When I get close to completing my feathers, so the first feather's just right up here, I have to decide if I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4 feathers in there. I think I'm going to make 2. there it is. I'm not going to make a knot in my thread here. I am going to continue quilting, and I'm going to quilt feathers on the other side of the spine. I do not try to match the inner feathers up with the outer feathers. I make them the same size and work my way around. However many there are, there are. But there will be fewer than there are on the outside. I'm close to ending again, so I'm going to choose to make 2 feathers. 1, 2. Now I want to quilt all of the background. I like to make the background really flat, and I'm going to quilt it to make it flat so that the feathers pop up with the wool batting inside, and that's just going to give a 3rd dimension to the quilt. So I like the piecing of the quilt for the squares and the triangles, and I like to use the wool batting to enhance the 3rd dimension. So I'm going to meander inside of this feathered wreath. So I finished meandering. I'm now going to trace between 2 feathers and then between 2 feathers and do all of the meandering out here in the background of that center star. For the star points of this quilt, I plan on quilting orange peel, wine glasses. It has a couple different names, pumpkin seed. This pattern starts with a grid. I have a stencil and a pounce pad, and I can use the pounce pad, make sure there's powder flowing from it, and swipe across. For video, however, I drew on it with some blue lines so that you can see it. I can see it with the white powder. I'm going to do this pattern completely free motion because I'm going to put 1 curve in each box. I'm going to curve from corner to corner and corner to corner, corner to corner and corner to corner. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it looks pretty cool once it's done, even imperfectly. This is a 1.5 inch grid. Move my fabric, curve from corner to corner, and corner to corner. So I basically made a half of a circle, which is 2 quarter circles, and I'm not really working on a perfect circle, I'm just letting the angles connect and do what they're going to do. Now I'm down to a partial continuous curve here, so I'm going to run into the edge. Not continuous curve, but pumpkin seed, orange peel, and curve. I did a little stitch in the ditch, and that just made a partial petal. I'll come back and finish that petal. And now I'm going to stitch in the ditch, and I'm going to free motion this, just kind of hiding my stitches inside of that seam. And I'm now going to do a frowny face instead of a smile. I'm going to come up. So that's my frowny face. I stitched my partial petal, and I'm going to stitch smiley faces going back. Now here, since my needle's already in the corner I need it to be in, I don't need to stitch in the ditch. Go do a smiley face. that's what it looks like stitched out. I'm going to complete the rest of the star points the same way. I've marked a circle in the center of one of the setting squares outside of the star, and I'm going to stitch a flexible feather in here. The first thing I'm going to do is stitch the spine, then the feather is going to go all the way out to the seams on the edge of the block so that I don't have to do any background stitching, and the inside is going to do the same thing. And now I'm going to do the feathers on the inside of the block. The first feather is going to go all the way into the middle, and then I'm going to do a series of short, medium, and long feathers to fill in the inside. There's my feathered wreath. In the small triangle blocks, I'm going to make a half of that feathered wreath, and in the large triangle blocks, I'm going to make a half of a larger feathered wreath in the same way. In my spacer borders and inner borders, I'm going to stitch a ribbon candy variation. Now, I personally think ribbon candy is the world's most perfect machine quilting design. It's my favorite. I use it whenever I possibly can. I personally like ribbon candy smaller. I'm really comfortable with it at about an inch, inch and a half. But this is 3 inches, and it needs more thread because I'm a firm believer in whoever puts the most thread on their quilt wins. So I'm going to do ribbon candy, which is just going back and forth with curves on the ends, but I'm going to fill it in. Stopped in the middle of the right side of my ribbon candy, and I'm now going to place a couple loops. One loop, stopping in that same point. Second loop, stopping in that same point. Now I'm going to stitch to the midpoint on the other side. And that's it, left, right, and fill it in. I make it look easier than it likely is. I've been doing this for several decades, but it's workable. I'm going to finish each of the 3-inch borders the same way. Moving out to the 3-inch checkerboard, I'm going to do the same pumpkin seed orange peel design. And the marking on this is super simple. I can measure and go in and mark the center of each of my squares. You can measure, I'm eyeballing it. Both are good. And this is what I have to do in 2 passes. I'm going to stitch down from the top to the bottom, and then I'm going to break my thread and come back and finish it from the top down. I'm going to stitch a curve from where the needle is in the corner into the middle and then back up to the corner. Kind of a half circle, but I'm not going for that accurate because it won't happen. And then swing around here and up here and back and go back and forth. Curve to the center and back up. Curve to the center, back to the point. Now, if I went and finished and went back up, I'd have to make a knot to come down to do the next one. So I'm going to leave the left side undone. And I'm going to continue that all the way down. I've stitched down once, and all that's missing is a curve that looks like a D on the left side here. So I'm going to go back up to the top and stitch a D going down the right side. Sorry, the left side. So this is now complete. I am going to finish each of the checkerboards the same way. Note, when I get to the outer border, I use some 1/4 inch masking tape to tape off the outer edge so that I do not stitch my curves into my binding area. So this is some 1/4 inch masking tape from the local quilt shop. And I will quilt it the same way.